Neither of my parents even went to college. My grandfather was a police officer up in Boston, and I knew just enough as a kid to be fascinated by it. I went to Northeastern, I was a criminal justice major, and I didn't know much. I lived in Boston, I belonged to a fraternity, and I started working in the court system in Roxbury, which was one of the most difficult areas in Boston. And I got to know the attorneys. A lot of them were very young, they worked in criminal and this and that, and I realized there were people I could relate to, and that got my interest going in a direction, because I wasn't raised around attorneys. And it fascinated me, and I pursued it. I was blessed, and I started off my career, and I thought I was going to stay in my entire career as a prosecutor. It's just, you know, I moved in different directions, so I've enjoyed all of it. Ours is in personal injury, the major thing I think to focus on. As I said, many of the cases, the liability is not really the issue. It's understanding the medical side of it. Medicals can get very, very complicated, and people's pre-existing histories, what they are. So you have to know physiatry, orthopedics, neurosurgery, neurology, just a whole slew of different things that are there. Trucking cases are rather unique in a couple different things. One is that these days with what they have in the black box, there's a lot of things that are contained within the computer system of the truck that will tell you its speed and tell you a number of other factors for how long the driver was going. All this gets back to the liability side of the event. Depending upon what happened, that may or may not be a factor. That's one thing towards it. The other thing is that most truck accidents involve very serious injuries. They're not mild injuries. They mostly involve very serious things, serious crashes, because of the size of these trucks and the weight that they have. So while it's a traditional crash, it has variances to it depending upon the nature of what's involved and what experts you need to bring to the occasion. So again, it comes back to the earlier you know about the event, the earlier you can get on top of it for both medical and for the liability side of it, then the better off you're going to be overall 3 months, 6 months down the road. You can't go back and undo what you wish had been done in the beginning. Trucking companies are very aggressive about that, about taking statements from people that their drivers have been in crashes with and otherwise, which is why it's important for people to get representation right away, especially in cases like that, because they're going to have adjusters talk to you at a time when you're in pain, you're confused, and you may say or do something that later on is very counterproductive to your case. They're not taking these statements from you to help you. They're taking these statements later on to use against you at a time and discredit you no matter what their people have done. We had a young woman a few years ago. She worked at a car dealership, and she was 19. She was traveling on her motorcycle, and she came from a very broken home and background. It was very, very difficult for her. And when she was going through, after she was struck by an elderly man with a car, and they admitted liability, she had a broken pelvis and she had some pretty serious internal injuries that could have gone a certain way. And she needed a lot of guidance, both on her job and on her medicals, and to help to get her life together. We had to help her with her apartment, we had to help her to take out loans, we had to help her get focused on certain things. And we worked with her to get her to make good life choices, because she really didn't have anybody to turn to make better life choices for her, to help her through the process. And when we resolved her case, we helped her set up a structure, for her money, so that the future could be more assured, and try to give her good advice about the things to be done. And when we finished with her case at the end, because she fought us in different things tooth and nail, she was young, she did some foolish things, and they loved the social media, the under 30 crowd, and they put their lives on Facebook and the whole bit, and she did a little bit of that too, but nothing that she lied about to me or to the other side. And that created some issues, and we had words about it, and she completed the process. But what I remember is, after all was said and done, and she had a very good outcome, she thanked me and thanked the lawyer I was working with on the case. And she said, "You guys helped me grow up. You helped me understand how to be a little bit better as an adult." And beyond the money, that was a great deal of praise. So from somebody that had really not caught a lot of breaks in the course of her life. God built me tall, but he did not build me patient. So when I go through these things, I communicate to them that every single day the clock is running for their case, because you need to make decisions that in the normal world outside of the litigation process, you would have years, in some instances decades, because the doctors have that luxury to be able to wait till you come back to see them. But as a person who is involved in this process, you don't have that luxury to wait. And two major reasons for it. The first is that the longer you wait to deal with the issues that you have, the more they're going to say it originates from another source, and that creates its own difficulties. But the second one, and it's surprising how often it happens, is an intervening act. You're going along after something happens and you're involved in another crash, or you've had something with another slip and fall, or some other situation arises that you never see. I have one right now with a young man who, through no fault of his own, in the last 2 years has been hit 4 separate times. All of them completely without him having any fault at all. And as a result, we had to put all 4 of them into his case. So it's difficult sometimes for people to understand that. I personally experienced it a few years back where I had an accident where I was hit. Both times I was completely stopped, daylight, beautiful weather. And I hadn't been involved in any form of a car accident in well over 25, almost 30 years before that. But it's what happens. And these days, a lot of it is connected to people who are distracted when they're driving. The cell phones have changed everything.